Welcome back to Catholic Bible Channel. Today I have the pleasure of showing you a truly pocket-size New Testament of the scriptures that were derived from the Douay-Rheims. Now, there is no true successor to the Douay-Rheims, but this is the closest thing we have, as this is translated from the Latin Vulgate, but really it's a revision from the Chancellor Douay-Rheims version. So the Douay-Rheims was a translation from the Latin Vulgate to English in the late 1500s and early 1600s. It was revised later on in the 1800s. So this is a revision of that. There is no Old Testament version. They only managed to do the New Testament, but it was done by the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine. Broadly speaking, the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine is responsible for laying the groundwork for what catechumens are expected to learn and what clergy are expected to teach to the laity. Okay, so this little New Testament is actually pocketable. It's 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and it was originally released in 1940. This small New Testament has a few features that make it very inviting to carry around. First of, they have a reading plan, a 6-month reading plan. They give brief introductions to every New Testament book, including the epistles. But if you look at the top corner of each page, they give you a date. Now, this is a 6-month reading plan that begins roughly in Advent. That's why it says December 1st. And the genealogy of Jesus is the first part of the Gospel of Matthew. But if you notice, it's about 2 pages long, and then it'll switch to another date. So you're expected or recommended to read about 2 pages per day. I personally never kept up with that reading plan. I just put this little Bible into my pocket or into my lunch bag and carry it around. And whenever I have a chance, rather than grabbing for my phone, I simply grab for this instead. It's literally about the size of a phone. I have here a 4x6 index card. Most phones aren't quite that wide, but you could see that this Bible would fit very nicely into a coat pocket. I did review the Baronius Press Pocket Douay-Rheims, and for perspective, it's quite a bit bigger than the New Testament I have here. The Pocket Douay-Rheims fits only in my coat pocket, so it's not exactly pocketable in the same way, but it's also a Latin-based translation. So the Douay-Rheims was translated from the Latin, and this was translated largely from the Douay-Rheims. When you buy this little Bible, it comes with one ribbon that's sewn in. I personally have had my copy for well over a year, and I think it's going to hold up pretty well. The pages are pretty thin, but there's very little bleed through, as you can see. In addition, I couldn't find the exact text size. If I had to estimate, it would be somewhere around 9 to 10 point font, something like that. I do like the way that they separate the text from the headers. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves that these headers here are not part of the Bible. And they make that very clear by putting them in a different color. I find that useful. Jesus's words are not in red, so you're not getting a red letter Bible. But I like that separation of text. One thing I do not like, however, is the placement of the verse. You can see that the verse placements are on the outside column, and I don't like that because it's hard to sometimes tell where one verse ends and where one verse begins. So citing using this Bible may be a little bit difficult, but that's not too much of a trouble. It's just not my preference. There's very few notes in this Bible, but I do like the way they render some of the notes. They have pretty strong opinions. So let me just show you one. So here I have the beginning of the first epistle of John. And if you have not read the first epistle of John, I recommend it. You should stop watching this and go read it immediately. It doesn't take long, at least the first chapter. Let me summarize for you. It's like a mini version of John's Gospel. That's why I like it so much. But it also talks about the sinfulness of man and how sometimes men may imply or say they are without sin. Which, if that's the case, then why was Jesus here at all? Why did he suffer, die, and resurrect? We are all sinful. So here's some notes at the bottom, and I'll read it for you. The incarnate Son of God, liars and Antichrist. He especially emphasizes the sublimity and excellence of love, the love of God, finding expression in brotherly love. The apostle further shows how to distinguish the children of God from the children of the devil. He describes the baseness and gravity of sin, and finally, he shows how the sinner may hope for pardon. So they're not sort of mincing words there. You should be a son of God. You should go to him for forgiveness, and you should acknowledge that there is gravity in sin. So, with the exception of a few notes, there is not too much in here besides the text of Scripture. For example, we have the end of the Apocalypse of John, and then there's just one map. And this map is Palestine in the time of Christ. That's the only map we have. And then it's over. There is a portion of an encyclical letter in the very beginning, in a general preface, and a brief explanation of the translation itself. And with that as the exception, we don't have anything but brief introductions to each New Testament book and epistle, and then just the text of Scripture itself. Altogether, we're at about 690 pages, and it's a great little Bible to have around. I highly recommend it, especially if you're looking to read something that sounds a little bit different than what you hear at Mass, but is true to the Latin scriptures or the Latin base scripture. This is what you're getting here. The language is the most modern version of this. There is the Knox Bible, which is a little bit different, which arguably could be more modern, but we're talking about the difference between language of the 1940s versus English of the 1950s. So they're more similar in their level of difficulty. If you find the Douay Rheims to be a little bit challenging, this might be a way to go, but unfortunately, it's just the New Testament. So this is something to consider since it is uniquely Catholic and in English, and there's not a lot of options for that. I have the full text of the Douay Rheims, the so-called pocket version, and it is very portable. I love having this one on me too. But it's not literally pocketable in any but one jacket pocket that I have. So I have a question down below. Do you guys have any other recommendations, even if it's just the New Testament, for Catholic pocket Bibles? Even if it's ideally with Proverbs, that's what I've been looking for. I would love to have the New Testament and Proverbs all together in one package. I've been struggling to find something that fits the New Testament and Proverbs, and maybe you can help me along the way. Do you guys have any pocket New Testaments to recommend? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Rejoice that Christ is Lord, and we'll see you in the next one.